I would also like to recognize the collaboration of the Global Sustainability Seafood Initiative and the Sustainability Trade Initiative teams. Our partnership has been outstanding, and we appreciate your dedication and commitment to help us make a difference. So again, thank you for joining us today, and I'll turn the call back to Thomas. Thanks, Thomas.
Thanks, Richard. And yes, thanks again for those remarks. And again, your invaluable support from you and your team to the SSCI Coalition. As Richard mentioned, a lot of the work that we're doing today has to do with the partnerships, and we're also proud to have in our introductory remarks Tony Bruggen from the Sustainable Trade Initiative, IDH, who's the Global Director from Food Crops and Ingredients. So over to you, Tony, for your remarks.
Thank you, Thomas. And yeah, first of all, congratulations to the team and the Consumer Goods Forums for being at this point and launching the SSCI. That's, I think, it's a real great step. As IDH, which stands for the Sustainable Trade Initiative, we have quite a few programs, sector programs like CFAF, the Sustainable Initiative for Fruit and Veg, FSI, the Floriculture Sustainable Initiative. We also do a lot in aquaculture and in quite a few other sectors. We use the benchmarking as a tool for the basket of standards used in these sectors. So that started off with GSCP in the past. Yeah, we work also closely with GSSI, but has been a real instrument in creating uniformities in the sector, and I think SSCI will build further on that. And with the Consumer Goods Forum behind it, I think it's also an indication towards the total supply chain that this is really serious, and you can invest on improvement of the social practices in the supply chain. So that's so we are, I think, we are very happy that that you're at this point and that we can use the facility. And like I said, with GSCP, we saw when it was introduced that that process of benchmarking in the beginning can create quite a bit of discomfort, questions, discussions. Richard mentioned and referred to that already. I think it's not an easy road, but it can add a lot of value because of it, the uniformity it creates on the essential criteria. And by doing that, you by creating that uniformity in the market, it allows the supply chain, like I said before, to invest in these improved practices as demand is behind it. And that's why it's good that it's a neutral facility, but it also has the market behind it. And that uniformity also makes that with the same investments, we can reach many more farmers, workers with the same amount of money. So it's much more effective than every scheme repeating on the same farm, just another training, which is just a little bit different. But by having these baskets of standards, which allows, and the SSCI allows that uniformity, costs can be reduced and efficiency can go up. So I wish you a very good start, and I can really ask the standards and the verification schemes to use this for the benefit of all. Thank you. Back to you, Thomas.
Thank you, Tony, and thanks again to IDH and all your support from your team throughout all of this process, and as well as the old GSCP process. So happy to have you join us for today's session as well. So I think many of you have been involved with the SSCI process in the past, since its inception in 2017. But for those of you who are not familiar, we'll go over very briefly the process for SSCI, what we're here, why everybody got together to work on these issues over the past 15 months, and why we have such a wide range of companies, stakeholders, and other interested parties helping us out on this journey. So SSCI, it is part of the Consumer Goods Forum, and we are designed to be the benchmark of choice for third-party sustainability standards. As Richard mentioned, many companies use, nearly all companies use third-party sustainability standards as some part of their assurance in their responsible sourcing programs. And we want to serve as the benchmark of choice for our industry, as well as our partners such as IDH, as we go forward. And the ultimate goal is to provide clear guidance that creates credible standards that ultimately meet our industry's expectations. We want to get companies together, get stakeholders together to really help us understand the issues out there, to help us define common approaches, and as Tony mentioned, not having to repeat the same training over and over again with slight variations to really create impact on the ground or on the fishing vessel, as in the case with our new AtSea operations scope. So today's launch event is effectively launching these two new scopes in primary production, which also includes aquaculture, and our AtSea operations scope, which was developed in partnership with our friends at the Global Sustainable Seafood Initiative, GSSI, and I think some of their team are on the call as well. These two new scopes accompany the existing scope in processing and manufacturing that SSCI launched in 2019. And they sort of complete the three main areas of the social sustainability elements that SSCI had set out in our initial plan for the development of the benchmarking. We're also currently looking at developing an environmental benchmark for a scope of activities except for seafood. That remains the realm of GSSI, but we're currently in strategic working group discussions to determine the scope and the relevance that SSCI can play in the environmental areas. So you may be getting some information and updates on that as we ask for stakeholder input and need your assistance in helping us set the bar for SSCI and the environment. To give you a sense of, again, what SSCI was designed to do was in getting those conversations together, getting the companies in the room, our goal was to identify the topics that were considered a credible social sustainability program must cover. So within the processing and manufacturing scope, we developed these 12 topics. Again, if you've been around this industry for a while, these are not really any surprises, things that you would often see in a company's code of conduct. But these were the topics that we felt that any credible social sustainability program or responsible sourcing program really needed to cover. So that became the basis for our work in both primary production and AtSea operations. And in the development of the two new scopes, we've added some additional topics. So in primary production and aquaculture, we took a look at chemical management, again, more so in the sense that how chemicals affect the lives of workers. And a relatively interesting area for us to explore was the community impact or responsible farming practices. Again, how in the primary production space, certain practices may impact communities and indigenous populations. So again, creating the level and the bar that which credible programs must take a look at. In AtSea operations, we kept most of the topics the same. We've changed some of the titles of the topics that we cover, but we also added repatriation. And this was a key topic that came up during the COVID crisis. The Consumer Goods Forum has been involved in a lot of discussions involving the repatriation of seafarers and the new guidance that has been put out for seafarers and the protection of workers who have been stuck at sea for quite a long time. So repatriation was actually a topic that was not actually in the first public consultation that we put out, but it became an important topic for us to cover in the second public consultation and the second draft of our AtSea operation scope. And you'll hear a bit more from our technical working group members in our panel discussion on how those discussions and again, how we get together as an industry to set that bar for the benchmarking process. In terms of the companies that are currently involved with SSCI, so this is the SSCI Coalition. At the Consumer Goods Forum, we operate on the Coalitions of Action model, and these are the companies that have agreed to join the SSCI Coalition and make that commitment from the CEO level. We are, of course, happy to have Richard here today from the J.M. Smucker Company, who's not only a member of the Coalitions of Action, but one of our CEO level co-sponsors. But again, we have a mix of manufacturers and retailers from across the globe having those conversations and helping us understand where we want to drive our third-party sustainability programs and how to impact and make the best responsible sourcing decisions possible. A quick look at our benchmarking process. So again, a lot of what we do is looking at those third-party sustainability programs that companies work with. We ask them to demonstrate through a self-assessment and a desktop review how they're meeting the criteria. And all of our criteria are available online. We can make the information available to you in a link in the chat box where you can find the criteria. And what we ask is, again, the program to demonstrate that they're meeting the criteria. We have an independent expert review this information. Then we have an office visit. Again, it's not just enough to demonstrate in an Excel document or a paperwork exercise that you're meeting the expectations of the industry. We have a process which involves an office visit. So again, getting to know the team on the ground, understand how their processes and policies on paper are implemented in person. Then an important aspect of our work is the public consultation. So all of the schemes that are eligible for benchmarking undergo a public consultation, and ultimately the scheme is recognized by SSCI as meeting all of the SSCI criteria. And finally, SSCI is not a one and done type process. We have a system where we monitor the continued alignment. So as new topics come up and potentially as we add new criteria, we want to make sure that the schemes and programs that all of our companies are working on, are working with, make sure that they are continuously aligned with our expectations. So we often get asked who are the current companies that are involved or current schemes involved with the SSCI benchmarking process. So currently in our manufacturing and processing scope, which has been open since 2019, we have 3 programs. The Aluminum Stewardship Initiative, one of our newest programs, they're currently in the desktop review process, as well as the Best Aquaculture Practices and the BRC GS, which just underwent their office visit. So those are the 3 current programs that are in our manufacturing and processing scope. The primary production scope and AtSea operation scope launched on May 10th. And we are happy to announce that the Responsible Fishing Vessel Standard has formally submitted an application and will be the first applicant for the AtSea operation scope. So we're looking forward to working with the RFVS folks as they go on this benchmarking journey. And so, of course, we're looking for other schemes and programs that companies work with to apply and undergo the benchmarking and create a robust system for us to understand where those gaps lie and ultimately recognize those programs that complete all of the SSCI criteria. So now what I'd like to do is turn it over to my colleague Surindri, who will be leading our panel session with our distinguished guests. So over to you, Surindri.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Hello, everyone again. Thanks for staying on the line. I'm very excited to open up the panel session today. And my name is Sayrinja Sabrina, so I'm part of the SSCI team. Very pleased to meet you all. And I'm very pleased to facilitate the session today with three industry experts who have been integral of the SSCI Scopes development. So let me just first start off with introduction. I'm pleased to be joined by Hugo Burns. He's the Vice President of the Product Integrity at Ahold Delhaize. Hugo is also one of the SSCI co-chairs representing the retailer college at the CGF SSCI, and he also serves as one of the board members of the Global Sustainable Seafood Initiative, GSSI. And next to Hugo, we also have Steve Fisher, who is the Sustainability Director at Sea Delight. Steve also was a very much a valuable working group member, because he was also part of the AtSea Operation Technical Working Group member. So he's been very instrumental of the AtSea Operation Scope development. Thanks for joining us, Steve, today, and Hugo. And also, last but not least, I'm pleased to be joined by Miguel Angel Tordesillas, who is the Executive Chairman of the Grupo Nueva Pesca Nova. Miguel, and also along with his organization, have been quite an instrumental part of the AtSea Operation Scope development, as well as the aquaculture's applicability, because Nueva Pesca Nova also took part in the one expert consultation reviewing the applicability of aquaculture sector of our primary production scope, which we also launched along today. So very pleased to be joined with all of you. I think now Thomas will stop sharing the screen. Maybe I will first start with my first question to Hugo. As the SSCI co-chair and also GSSI board member representing the retailer college here. Hugo, as we know that Ahold Delhaize has been an instrumental part of the development of SSCI since its inception. So now with the launch of these 2 new scopes and 4 new schemes being benchmarked, could you please talk a little bit about the journey of SSCI from vision to reality?
Yes, well, first of all, I would like to thank and congratulate everyone involved with the achievements that we are announcing today. But indeed, it has been quite a journey from the conception of the idea of SSCI and to getting where we now are. Yes, how did this start? Well, for Ahold Delhaize, I have the responsibility to make sure that we have the proper assurance for the activities, not only of our own company, but also of our suppliers where it comes to sourcing products. I've also been involved with GFSI, the Global Food Safety Initiative, and years ago already we developed a benchmarking model for food safety standards, so that we whenever a supplier came up with a certificate, we could rely on that certificate, provided it was done against the so-called GFSI recognized standard. And I thought, why don't we have this for social compliance standards? Because there are many out there. So which are the ones that we can trust? Which are the ones that have a proper system surrounding it? So that we can rely, in this case, not so much on the certifications, because very few have those, but on the audits that we receive. Well, in other words, we wanted the GFSI for social compliance standard, and SSCI has become that. And at the beginning, indeed, we looked at social compliance standards for manufacturing. As a retailer with literally hundreds of thousands of products on our shelves, with many thousands of suppliers, obviously we need to cover a whole range of products, so not just manufactured, primary production being equally important for us. So very glad that we were able to extend the scope to that part. Aquaculture, I always think it's a very specific type of agriculture, but it is still, let's say, it's all primary production at least. but the latest addition to also look at what happens at sea, where in recent years we've learned more and more that we have risks, not only from an environmental point of view, but also from a social compliance or a human rights point of view, if you like. Very important that we now, first of all, have a benchmark standard so that I can now truly say that we're able to cover the entire range of the products that we sell for social compliance. And great news that we already have a first applicant of a standard to be benchmarked. So a long journey, but it has taken us to full coverage in the area of social compliance. So now it's on, but then I'm kind of telling what the future will bring, and now it's on to environmental.
Thanks, Hugo. And yeah, thanks for highlighting the fact that SSCI aim to adopt the methodology of GFSI. And indeed, that is correct. We ensure alignment in our methodology within the benchmarking space. So thanks a lot for that. So let me just now turn to Steve. I hope he's still with us. Hi, Steve. We're curious. So hi, we're curious. So having been part of the technical working group of the AtSea operation scope yourself, in your view, how did the technical working group address the issues of social sustainability, especially for seafood and on fishing vessels?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. And I have to say that the team that organized the working group and the support from the consultants and from the GSSI staff was really great. It really helped us. Also, a very solid basis on references to, key ILO and FAO reference materials helped us. But even then, at least for me, I'm more familiar with environmental sustainability, and I also learned this experience. This was a learning journey for me about social responsibility at sea. And it was a little bit complicated because there's so many different scale and size of fisheries and so many different kinds of fisheries all over the world. And that I think that the initial instinct and the input that came from the group was to kind of follow kind of the same pattern or the same standards as for human rights and labor in food processing facilities. And pretty quickly we learned that that's not going to work at sea, and especially for the wide range of different scales of vessels and fisheries. So we decided, we realized these are not big factories floating around with people getting paid by salaries by the hour, that there's a wide range of scale, especially from my point of view, because we work a lot with small scale and medium scale community fisheries. I felt that we really had to try to be very careful not to exclude them or disenfranchise them, especially as we work with these tuna fisheries. So that, for example, we buy, not a lot, but our company buys crab meat from Indonesia, that some of it actually comes from fisheries where people don't even have boats. They go out and set their traps, by hand on the seashore. And then we have also people sourcing, from giant, factory processor vessels. So it was almost very tempting to try to say, okay, let's make two benchmarking frameworks, one for small and artisanal fisheries and one for large scale industrial fisheries. We didn't go that way. We decided to try to, make a one that will fit all these categories. So I think that the working group did a good job, and the end result is something that is flexible as to fishery scale and the level of risk, But I also want to see some of the standards that come out. I've already seen the one mentioned earlier. I'd like to see some more. I'd like to be sure they are inclusive of small-scale fisheries. And again, as an importer and distributor of seafood in the U.S. and other parts of the world, we are very much looking for some kind of coherent AtSea social responsibility standard, and we based on this benchmark, because there's so many people coming out with their own standards and meeting standards, and it's quite confusing. So we're really looking forward to robust, the availability of robust third-party social responsibility programs that we can use in the fisheries we source from. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Steve, and thanks a lot for already highlighting the call to actions among the social sustainability programs on seafood. And indeed, I'd like to echo what Steve just said about making the scope actually universally applicable for schemes, not just for medium scale, small scale, but to all. So thanks a lot for that contribution, Steve. Now I would like to turn to Miguel Angel Tordesillas, who is the executive chairman of NOFANAM, actually, of the Nueva Pescanova in Namibia. So hello, Miguel. Thanks for joining us today. So we truly appreciate Nueva Pescanova's participation, especially in the one-to-one expert consultation of the AtSea operations, as well as the aquaculture review panel. I'm just curious now from your end as a stakeholder that participated in the consultation, how was the development process of the AtSea operations scope in your view, in which you're part of?
Good afternoon, and thank you, Sandri. You stopped my heart a little bit earlier, half an hour ago. I thought I'd been promoted without my knowledge even. It's true, I represent Nueva Pescanova's interests in Namibia, and I send my greetings from the remote southerly town of Namibia called Lüderitz. Along with our 2,100 employees, our company in Namibia, NOFANAM, fishes and processes hake, and we commercialize and distribute it directly to our markets, with particular focus in Southern Europe, Spain, Portugal, Italy, and France, and we also sell into Greece. Since our humble beginnings back in March 1990, the month and year of the Namibian independence, we've been steadily accumulating our experience and our knowledge in responsible actions and in sustainable management in the environmental, social, and labor spaces. The latter case, most especially when we're drawing up, for example, our collective bargaining agreements. I mean, in Namibia, we were the first company in any sector of the economy to negotiate a collective bargaining agreement with a trade union. And this is applicable to both our land and our sea operations. So Namibia, as our adopted country, is also a signatory to ILO 188. And this facilitates our focus in how we manage and implement our responsible and sustainable management of our business and the environment within which we operate. In equal measure, and very important, our ultimate, shareholder, shall we say, Nueva Pescanova, untiringly supports us with corporate policies in responsible fishing, sustainability, and in the responsible management of our people. We feel that's been very important in how we drive our message and our policies here locally. And then with this experience, we've been active participants and actors in the public consultation processes of the labor benchmark tool of the GSSI and SSCI being presented here today. And we shared our practical views, our experiences, our knowledge in regards to operating in our space in these southerly attitudes. We have contrasted and shared our comments and position in aspects such as the social responsible labor practices and ethical behaviors. So no child labor, no forced labor, true listings, the dignity of, or respecting the dignity of fishermen and women, the protection of migrant fishermen and women, fair and transparent recruitment and placement, also in the fair conditions of service for all fishermen and women. For example, work agreements, fair remuneration, freedom of association, very important, and collective bargaining, non-discrimination in employment, social and pension fund security, health and medical aid benefits, and compensation systems, grievances. Also, in the spheres of health and safety of all fishermen and women, roles and accountability, occupational health and safety, rest periods, hours of work, fitness standards, medical examinations, and of course, medical treatment. And then last but not least, and also in the provision of decent accommodation, water, and food criteria, the framework for oversight, appropriate onboard accommodations, well-maintained spaces, comfortable and safe spaces, provision of good, decent sanitary facilities, wholesome, nutritious food, drinking water, and so on. So with all these, we believe that a very good job has been done, and us to be associated has been something that we both proud of, and also it raises our own standard. We'd like to think we do things well. We seek perfection, which is obviously the utopia of it all. And this labor benchmark tool of the GSSI, SSCI is a firm and definitive step forward in guaranteeing the legitimacy of labor certification schemes that are orientated specifically to fishing operations at sea. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Miguel, and for sort of name dropping some key topics that SSCI and GSSI were also looking at during the scope development process. I would also like to take this opportunity to let the participants know if you have any questions to the panel speakers, please feel free to write your message or questions in the chat on Zoom. My colleague Thomas will be helping to sort of filter some of the questions because we have the limited time, so we probably cannot answer all of the questions. So I would also now like to turn again to Hugo. Given his expertise, close involvement of the SSCI since its inception, and also as a retailer, retailer representative here. So Hugo, as a global retailer, we know that the sustainability landscape is getting increasingly complex. So what role do you see then for recognized programs in Aholt's responsible sourcing roadmap playing a part here?
Yes, well, certifications have always played a big role because it is also a very easy tick in the box for any sourcing manager. Is the supplier certified? Yes, that's the tick in the box, and that has always been helpful. But of course, what we do see is that the landscape is getting more complex. We do see that there are questions asked or reports written about the value of certifications and how much is it worth. There are discussions about beyond certification. More and more we hear about due diligence and the potential due diligence legislation. I will always argue that audits and certification are a great base for having assurance. It may not be the full assurance, it may not be complete, but it is and it will remain that easy tick in the box. Okay, so that we have. Now let us see, are there still any gaps, any holes, anything in addition that we need to do? Do we indeed need to go beyond the certification or beyond this audit? But not to do away with these audits. So I will always argue also in due diligence, compulsory due diligence processes, audits and certifications have a place. And therefore there is, as far as I'm concerned, still very much relevance to the work of SSCI.
Thank you very much, Hugo, and thanks for highlighting the importance of SSCI, especially to foster sort of credible assurance for the company's due diligence systems. Now that we're talking about the importance of SSCI and also how it plays a role in companies' due diligence systems, I'm just now wondering now from Steve or Miguel, with regards to which other topics that you think SSCI or GSSI need to prioritize or focus on going forward, if any. And also, please feel free to raise your call to action to the sustainability programs out there, why you think this would be a great step to sort of increase credibility, to foster collaboration together as part of the SSCI benchmark. So I don't know, perhaps Miguel, would you like to start off first?
Well, in terms of our, shall we say, our call to action, in the space that we operate in here and in these southerly latitudes, it would be mainly focused on fishing companies whose labor standards would need to be responsible and sustainable and in alignment with local, national, regional, and international, shall we say, legislation, which are really in the main, that they align themselves to the principles and the spirit of what is intended to achieve, with its strong ethical bent, and that they certify their operations with the standards which in due short time will have been accepted via, shall we say, the GSSI and SSCI benchmark. And that the owners of the standards would inform fishing companies that the benchmark tool would provide them with international recognition and an acknowledgement of work well done. That, in a nutshell, would be certainly where I am standing now, and I'm sure that our corporate office would support us in that process.
Thank you, Miguel. Steve, do you have any opinions to share with regards to the call to actions, or perhaps other topics that you think we should focus on going forward?
Well, I think one of the calls to action is something GSSI is already working on, which is the seafood map program, which is intended to help fisheries that may not be ready for certification or on the path. They're on the beginning of the path to sustainability, environmental sustainability, and social standards, providing a platform and a means for them to make progress that may not necessarily involve as much cost, et cetera. I think that's really important. Also going forward, I always say this, and I don't know if anybody, if it's ever worked, but in terms of the work that we have to do to when social responsibilities for fisheries for AtSea operations are available, these cost money, and they can cost a lot of money, especially for big, multi-vessel fisheries. And in the case of, developing country and small scale or artisanal fisheries, it may be difficult to secure financing. So if there was a way that we could help provide links to funding, public or private funding, grants, et cetera, to help perhaps also help some schemes get started, I think that would be really important work as well. But again, just a suggestion, and my perspective is more, again, from working with smaller scale and artisanal fisheries. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve, for the call to action and also for the suggestions. We'll definitely bring it back to our coalition or steering committee members for further discussions. So I know that we are reaching the end of the panel session. It's probably a little bit over time. I just would like to thank everyone again, especially our three industry experts here who have taken the time to speak with us and share their thoughts. Before I close the panel session, I would also like to highlight 3 things that I got from this discussion. So the first one is that the scope development of SSCI together with GSSI have been indeed a learning journey, I think, for everyone, including the SSCI teams included. Second of all is also the SSCI recognition and benchmarking process is also a tool in the toolkit for responsible sourcing and due diligence approach of companies, which we have heard a lot from our discussions today. And last but not least, also the need to sort of find ways and approaches to help smallholders, also small scale fisheries here as the next topics to focus on in the SSCI benchmarking process, and also SSCI as a forum for collaboration. So that's my 3 takeaways from the discussion today. I would very much like to continue the discussion, but time is limited. So thank you very much, everyone. But we are not done yet, because we still have 15 minutes left together to sort of continue to the next session. So thanks, Steve, Hugo, and Miguel. Please stay on if you have the time. So I'll probably now hand over to my colleague Thomas and ask if, for instance, there is any other question that is in the chat box.
Thanks, Surendri. Yeah, I think that was a great panel, and thanks again to our panelists joining from all over the globe. I think, again, really highlights that aspect of our work at SSCI to try to incorporate different perspectives and different approaches, as was mentioned, sort of looking at small farms, small fishers, large scale as well. It was a challenge throughout the group there. We're still happy to accept any questions that you have in the chat, but I know that one came in earlier over email, is sort of where the partnership between GSSI and SSCI goes from here. And that's something that we have been discussing for quite some time with AtSea operations. This is version 1. This is not the end of the line for sure in terms of the criteria. This and SSCI in general is an ongoing discussion. The criteria are meant to evolve as new issues crop up over time, or as the industry expectations, or for that matter, regulations are change over time. So we certainly look forward to working with our GSSI colleagues as we will review the information that we get in the benchmarking from round 1 of those programs that go through it. And again, make sure that we coordinate with the stakeholders to ensure that we have set the bar at a sufficiently robust level for the schemes that many of our companies use. So I think they'll continue to do their great work on environmental sustainability in the seafood sector. SSCI has now ownership over the social aspects of the seafood areas, and then we will, of course, collaborate more on some of the more technical issues involved with benchmarking. We're involved with a number of different working groups on how to make the actual benchmarking process a bit faster and a bit more streamlined. So that's where, in one case, where this partnership goes from here. And that's, I would say, also the same with all of our scopes, both primary production and our processing and manufacturing. These are version 1. There are a lot of topics that we have discussed over time that didn't necessarily make the cut in the first go round, and we look to add those back in as we go forward. The other question, Surendra, I think, I know that you're involved a bit with this in terms of the development, but just in terms of where can companies or interested individuals find out information on the recognition process. I know that we showed a bit in one of the slides the process of the schemes, but I know that information is publicly available. And if you want to let folks know where they can keep track of the schemes, that.
Absolutely. So yes, thanks for the great question. And indeed, what Thomas said is correct. So every information about these applicant schemes, and even with the SSCI benchmarking process, our criteria, all the documentations that you need should you wish to apply for the SSCI benchmark are available on our website. I'm very much happy to forward you the link on this chat just after I finish my sentence. So yes, everything is online, and if you wish to follow SSCI more closely, meaning you receive sort of our newsletters regularly, please also sign up to SSCI newsletters, and the link will follow. So yes, everything is online, even throughout the SSCI benchmarking process as well.
Fantastic. So guess we've got a fairly quiet crowd today, but of course, if you are interested in following along with SSCI, as Surendra mentioned, do let us know. We are always looking to expand our stakeholder database, and of course, invite companies to participate within the SSCI Coalition. I think, Richard, if you've got a few moments, if you can help us close out the session with your thoughts and reflections on today's launch event for our 2 new scopes.
Sure, happy to. Couple of things. One is that I want to thank Hugo, Steve, and Miguel. That was a great presentation, really insightful remarks, and it's helping us all through this journey. You know, SSCI is really the logical extension of GFSI, which has been a successful process for many, many years. And it took a while to get GFSI off the ground and working well. And now it's been a great add to the industry. And SSCI is just in the earlier stages of that, but it's going to be just as important for the supply chain going forward. And so in our call to action today, a couple of things. What I'd like to ask is for the scheme owners to get benchmarked. We would really like to have you do that and show us that you're able and willing to meet and exceed the industry expectations. And I'm sure that that is certainly possible. For our companies, we would like you to use the SSCI tool. Our industry created the SSCI and is designed to improve, as I said earlier, the trust and sustainability programs that you're currently using. And so we'd like you to start adopting that tool. And then for the stakeholders, just please get involved. Help us improve and evolve the SSCI benchmarking criteria to meet the complex challenges that we face today and into the future. You know, the pandemic really has only heightened the importance of having an improved supply chains. I know this past year has been crazy for all of us in terms of supply chain, but going into the future, we're going to need a program like SSCI to make it even more effective than it's ever been before. So this is a really important initiative. It's something that I know the Consumer Goods Forum and all the companies involved there are truly behind. And so your help, your involvement is really where the rubber meets the road. And so we want to ask you to get involved and stay involved. I see there's about 75 people on this call, so you're probably already involved. And we thank you for that. And we just want to take it to the next step. So Thomas, with that, I'll turn it right back to you to close.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks again, everyone, for joining today's session. Surendra has put some information in the chat there. Yeah, I appreciate the time that everyone took today to join us in our announcement event and our launch event for our 2 new scopes. We will be having more of these public sessions going forward, whether it comes to stakeholder sessions or general updates about SSCI. So with that, I don't know if any of our panelists have any other closing thoughts, but appreciate everybody's time and looking forward to catching up with all of you in the very near future.